The case of the People versus Reynolds and Robbins is now in session. The Honorable Judge Norman Schneider presiding. You may be seated.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 45th Annual Street Law Mock Trial Tournament. Give a big hand to the two finalist teams who are here. We have this team with School Without Walls, the prosecution team, and Banneker High School, the defense team. I'm Richard Rowe, the Director of Street Law, and I want to say how happy I am to be here tonight because I've actually been the Director of Street Law since 1983, and I've seen now, just in the Superior Court alone, on our first two rounds, I've counted them Saturday, I've actually helped organize 67 mock trials in the Superior Court. And if you add these together with the finals, which would be 34, it's over 100. So I'm happy to be here, and I want to tell you that each mock trial is as special as the next, because we see here these wonderful high school students who've worked really hard putting together a complicated case out of a very diverse fact pattern that has stipulated facts, 6 witness statements, numerous pieces of evidence, specific statutes, supplementary law, rules of evidence, and rules of courtroom procedure. And all of this, they have to integrate into, for each of their sides, a compelling story, arguing one way or the other around a set of fairly controversial facts. Now, you'll hear those facts developed from these two different perspectives. But before we do that, I want to do a number of things. First of all, I want to say that even though these are the two finalist teams, they represent 30 teams who came from the DC schools, who participated in, among 300 students in 15, we had 30 teams from around 12 classes in 10 public schools. And we actually have another program in another school who's not here tonight and not in our tournament, because we actually run a program in the DC jail for teenagers, young people who are under 18, who are incarcerated for serious and violent offenses. And Sarah Medway, one of our scorers, actually, and Kent Withercombe, we just acknowledge just for a minute, Kent Withercombe, they actually volunteer along with some of us and actually teach that class every Friday. And they're going to be doing that mock trial inside the prison on May 9th. So we have a very comprehensive program that can actually reach a full range of students. But I want to actually congratulate the teams. There are some representatives from some of the high schools who participated. I know there's some students from Cardozo. I didn't see anybody else from the other schools. But these other schools worked equally hard and had wonderfully compelling performances in their earlier rounds. And we're really, the whole program is an extraordinary thing to see so much talent, so much ability go into creating these compelling stories and doing this wonderful advocacy. Because we believe street law not only helps students understand the law that affects their lives, the fundamental legal principles that create the rule of law and fairness and justice, but also by doing this kind of a problem, it teaches them how to do a very complex, integrative way to solve a problem and to narrate it in a way that the same way that you could write, say, a term paper. Because in a term paper, you would draw from widely diverse sources, pick and choose the important parts out of those widely diverse sources, and integrate them into a coherent story around an important theme. The mock trial does exactly the same thing, except it does it in a legal structure and using a lot of legal language. So we believe that the mock trial prepares you not only if you wanted to go into a legal career, but it's good to go into any career. So, and I'm really proud of that because I think this program really prepares our students to go far beyond where they were when they started the beginning. Now, a couple of acknowledgments that I want to make. First of all, I want to acknowledge the author of the problem, which is our now visiting associate professor, Charisma Howe. Stand up. And I want to acknowledge Garrett Favinger, who is a teaching fellow for street law. Garrett, who is he's absolutely essential in doing the teaching, supervisory, and administrative work of our program, which holds it together. So Garrett, thank you very much. Extraordinary person. So the two schools I want to acknowledge. We have our principal here from Banneker, Anita Berger. Welcome. And from School Without Walls, we have the associate principal, Sylvia Isaac, vice principal Sylvia Isaac. And Ms. Isaac, of course, is a very special person because she was the cooperating teacher in street law, many years ago when I began with the program. So it's been wonderful working with you all these years. And I also want to acknowledge that for School Without Walls, the law firm of Fried Frank, which has been very supportive. And thank you all for your help there. And the lawyers of Kaiser Permanente, who've helped with the Banneker team. And I want to thank Kent Withercombe, who's also here, who coordinates a mentor program with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, who helps arrange law firms to help all of our street law classes. Kent, thank you very much. And I should acknowledge that we have a few guests here tonight. We actually have 4 Russian lawyers and street law professors who are actually here from different parts of Russia, happen to be observing our work today, so welcome. So, let me see. The last thing I should say is, before I was looking for I wonder who our scores are. They are, let me introduce them right now. Judy Zimmer. And she is a lawyer and one of the directors of a program called Street Law, Inc., which does street law all around the world. And then we have Ali Muhammad. Mr. Ali Muhammad is welcome. He's a commissioner for the D.C. Human Rights Commission. And Ms. Sarah Medway, or Sarah. And Sarah is a former street law fellow and a former one of the top people in the D.C. Charter School Board, and now she works for the Council for Court Excellence. So thank you for our scores for being here tonight. And now I want to turn things, in a minute I'm going to turn things over to the judge. But doing this tonight gives me a particular pleasure because Judge Norm Schneider I met in 1983 when he was a first-year student arriving with his wife, and we met in the first-year reception at the Kennedy Center, met with my wife, and we discovered that we lived a block away in Tacoma Park. We had just moved there, he had just moved there, and we each had 3 boys who were roughly the same age, and our boys were the best of friends. Actually, at some point, they moved to Bethesda, and we moved to Silver Spring, so that they didn't become such, they drifted apart a little bit. But Norm's oldest son, Ben, actually came to Georgetown. He's now a evening division student about to graduate. He did street law in our summer program, and it's just a wonderful experience to have such a close relationship, because not only do we have a good friendship over these years, but Norm has come since he graduated in 1987 and judged almost every single mock trial at the D.C. Superior Court for all those years, which is well over 50 mock trials. So we wanted, with this very good balanced set of teams, we wanted to have a particularly skilled and experienced mock trial judge. So Norm, thank you very much for agreeing to do it. So I'm going to turn the case over to Judge Schneider for his remarks and then to start the case.
Good evening. As Rick said, my name is Norm Schneider, and I'm an attorney with my main office in Alexandria, Virginia. but I've practiced in this area in Maryland and D.C. for the last 30 years, following a clerkship where the judge I clerked for saw all of the murder cases in the District of Columbia for that year. So I'm familiar with the D.C. and New Columbia criminal codes, and I'll be presiding over the trial today. This case is not about me, it's about the high school students, and about the case that's before us, the People versus Reynolds and Robbins. So without further ado, let's begin. I call the case of the People versus Alex Reynolds and Jesse Robbins. Can the attorneys please come forward who are going to be giving the opening statements?
The others can come up to the bench too.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure that there are enough seats for everybody to come up, but. And just to be sure, the prosecution is okay, and the defense, okay. Well, let's begin. Does the prosecution have an opening statement? Okay, Ms. Saltzman, please continue.
Your Honor, in the following hours, through witness testimony and questioning, you will hear the story of two teenagers who took advantage of a hurricane for personal gain. These two teenagers, Alex Reynolds and Jesse Robbins, now stand before you today. They are charged with looting, engaging in a riot, and disorderly conduct. And once again, they are trying to use a storm to justify their own greedy and reckless actions. When a hurricane hit their city, the defendants, Robbins and Reynolds, decided that the orderly governmental aid process was too slow for them and decided to take matters into their own hands. Instead of waiting in the stadium where truckloads of supplies were being shipped in and where over 100 Red Cross employees and countless volunteers were aiding to the public, the defendants decided to leave the stadium and loot for their own gain. Jesse Robbins was seen and has admitted to entering the Megamart during a period of lawlessness and without authorization. Robbins then took a cart full of items from the Megamart. Alex Reynolds has testified to and was seen exiting with his friend Jesse Robbins the private residence of Danielle Combs. Even though Reynolds stole cash, high-end sneakers, an iPad, and jewelry from Danielle Combs' house, he is still trying to hide behind the storm and say that the things he stole were necessary for his survival. During this trial, a friend of the defendants, Kelly Wayne, will come to the stand. Kelly has had some problems of his own. However, he is here today because he realizes that what he did with the defendants during that storm was wrong and immoral. Kelly will testify that the defendants left the stadium where plenty of supplies were being passed out in order to steal. Kelly will make it clear that Robbins and Reynolds ventured out of the stadium not because they were told that they could or should, but because that they heard that other people were looting and that no one was stopping them. Danielle Combs, a charitable member of the community, had her house looted by the defendants. Mrs. Combs will tell you how the defendants trashed her house on the day of the incidents, looking for items that they could steal. Robbins and Reynolds went through Danielle's personal belongings. They invaded her husband's private space and their 3 kids' whole world. When Danielle Combs arrived home after having evacuated the city due to the storm, several items were missing in her house, including high-end sneakers, cash, an iPad, and jewelry. While Reynolds will say that he and Robbins trashed Combs' house in search of something to trade for insulin, they somehow managed to forget to steal the diabetes medication in Danielle Combs' house, and then were found in possession of all those previously stated missing items when they were arrested. Randy Williams, a 5-year NYPD officer and Army reservist, will also testify today. Randy Williams was in New Columbia with the National Guard and was the first person who arrested the defendants. Williams will tell you of his near altercation with the defendants prior to the arrest caused by Robbins' short temper, and of his attempts to keep the peace in New Columbia despite the widespread rioting and looting. Officer Williams was attempting to help Megamart employees clear the store and give essential items to those affected by the storm, when suddenly a massive wave of looting began after a large crowd broke through the window of the Megamart and began to flood inside. This caused Williams to retreat so that he was not overwhelmed. However, he and his partners stayed in the area in order to keep the peace and make sure no one was hurt. While Williams wished he could have stopped the looting, he was not deputized with the power to arrest, and the crowd was too violent to attempt any arrest at that time. The defense will likely try to portray Williams as having some sort of bias or vendetta towards these two teenagers. However, Williams has only ever done what he thought was best for the people of New Columbia with his experience as a police officer. On the day that Officer Williams arrested the defendants, he also arrested at least 10 other people suspected of looting. The defendants, Reynolds and Robbins, saw an opportunity to steal without consequences, and they took it. They not only participated in a massive wave of looting, but they also took items that were not necessary to survival, especially considering that the supplies that were necessary were being distributed at the stadium that they left. Moreover, the two participated in a massive wave of rioting that was so obstructive that it forced a trained police officer and his partner to stand by watching helplessly and doing all that they could to prevent any serious harm from coming to the citizens of New Columbia. In this case, the defense must prove by preponderance of the evidence that the items the defendants, Alex Reynolds and Jesse Robbins, stole were necessary, and there is no way that they will be able to do that. Jewelry is not necessary for survival. An iPad is not necessary for survival. High-end Yeezy sneakers are not necessary for survival. By the end of this trial, it will become clear by a reasonable doubt that the defendants are guilty of looting, disorderly conduct, and engaging in a riot. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a simple story of personal greed. By taking these items and participating in this tumultuous and violent riot, Alex Reynolds and Jesse Robbins were in direct violation of the law of New Columbia and deserve to be treated as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Halter. Let me just give some instruction here. In between each of the activities of the lawyers, I'm going to wait for the scorers before proceeding. So that's why there'll be a little pause between different people. Ms. McGreer, do you have an opening statement for the defense?
Ready for the defense, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Sharika McGreer, and I will be representing the defendants, Ms. Alex Reynolds and Ms. Jess Robbins, in this case. Your Honor, this case is about dire need and not selfish desire. Our clients, are not guilty on all charges of looting, engaging in a riot, and disorderly conduct due to the sole fact that these two golden-hearted individuals exercised their natural human right to life and to survive against all odds, even when these said odds were stacked against them. On September 19, 2016, Hurricane Regina touched down on the city of New Columbia. This was an extraordinary, powerful, and deadly hurricane that carved out much of the infrastructure of New Columbia and caused catastrophic damage. As a result, there was significant loss of property and life in the region. A great percentage of New Columbia was severely damaged from the devastating natural disaster, which included flooded lands from rainfall and broken debris from homes due to high wind mileage. Parts of the city center were still submerged in water. Flooding and high winds destroyed many homes and storefronts and other buildings. Some neighborhoods were flooded so badly that water surged as high as rooftops, forcing thousands of people to seek refuge on the tops of their homes. For many, this left them in the hot sun without food or water for an extended period of time, causing exhaustion and dehydration. One such victim of this epic catastrophe described his experience as horrendous, stating how he had been stranded on the roof of his house for more than a day. After the hurricane, local officials were still trying to fully assess damage and serve the needs of those in the New Columbia community. However, the local officials were unsuccessful in their ability to serve and protect the people of New Columbia. And so our clients, Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Robbins, salvaged what they could out of the demolished buildings and freely gave out of the goodness of their hearts to the people of New Columbia. The prosecution might argue that Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Robbins committed a crime such as theft, participating in a riot, and other atrocities by salvaging food, clothing, and other essentials from the Megamart, as well as other abandoned homes, by stating, even though a natural disaster had occurred, our clients had no reason to salvage the materials. However, our clients did what any individual in their position would have done. They fought for their lives and helped injured people in need, and thus are not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. McGreer. Okay. Mr. Thomas, are there any witnesses for the prosecution?
Yes, the prosecution would like to call Kelly Wayne to the stand.
Okay. Mr. Wayne, please come forward. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You may be seated. Mr. Thomas, you may proceed.
To clarify, my name is Luca Christensen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine, Your Honor.
Sorry, wait. Can you clarify Luca Christensen is the attorney that's going to be doing the examination?
Yes. What is your name?
My name is Kelly Wayne.
And Kelly, where do you live?
I live in New Columbia, but I recently moved with my family from Texas.
And where do you go to school?
I go to school at New Columbia High.
And who are your friends at New Columbia High?
Two of my friends are Alex and Jesse.
What have you noticed about your friends, Alex and Jesse?
About Jesse, he seems, when I'm around him, he seems angry a lot of the time, and especially towards authority figures. And as for Alex, he's one of Jesse's best friends, and he's always there to back him up when he gets into trouble.
And could you tell us about what happened on the day of the hurricane?
On the day of the hurricane, since my family and I weren't affected as we live above the flood line, we went down to the stadium to help in the relief effort, as my mother's a registered nurse.
And describe what you saw when you got to the stadium.
When we got to the stadium, there was supplies coming in by the truckload, and my brothers and I helped to pass out food and supplies while my mother helped as a nurse.
And what happened once you started handing out supplies?
While I was handing out the supplies, I saw my two friends, Alex and Jesse, and they approached me. And Alex said that people were taking stuff from homes and stores outside of the stadium and without any consequence, and they suggested that we do so as well.
And what did you then do?
After that, we left the stadium and went to the Megamart.
What did you do when you got to the Megamart?
Once we had gotten to the Megamart, Alex had chose to stay outside while Jesse and I went inside.
And what did you take from the Mega Mart?
Once we got inside the Mega Mart, I took items such as some new shoes, some gold jewelry, some video games, a stereo system, and a baseball bat.
And what happened the next day?
The next day, I was arrested.
And what happened when you got to the jail?
When I was in the jail, I saw Alex and Jesse, and I overheard them saying that if they kept their story straight, that they could beat the charges.
And looking back, how do you feel about what you did and what happened during the hurricane?
Of course, I feel awful for the situation my friends are in, and I feel awful about what I've done. But I feel that I've learned from my mistakes, and I pled guilty and admitted what I had done was wrong. And I'm here to tell the truth today to try and make amends for my mistakes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Yes, Dennis, do you have any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Mr. Wayne.
Good evening.
Isn't it true that you moved to New Columbia because your neighborhood was going downhill?
Yes.
And you were getting in a lot of trouble, correct?
I wouldn't say it was a lot of trouble.
Okay, thank you. You attended New Columbia High School where you met Alex and Jesse, right?
That's correct.
And your family didn't need to evacuate the city because you all lived the bloodline, correct?
Yes.
And your mother is a registered nurse that was helping out in the stadium, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was.
And you seen Alex and Jesse in the stadium that day, didn't you?
Yes.
And you wanted to go with them because you heard people were taking things, didn't you?
Well, they suggested it to me,
And after receiving this information, you headed straight to Mega Mart with Alex and Jesse, correct?
yes, we did.
And Alex was hesitant to go inside, wasn't she?
Yeah, she stayed outside.
And in Mega Mart, you headed to the sporting goods department while Alex and Jesse went to look for clothes and food, correct?
Yes, and Alex stayed
And you
outside.
took some new shoes, didn't you?
Yes.
As well as some gold jewelry, correct?
Yes.
And you also took a few video games too, right?
Yes.
Along with the surround sound stereo system and the baseball bat, didn't you?
I just caught up. Got
And
caught
all
up,
of these
yeah.
items were for you, weren't they?
Yes.
And you took them because you wanted them, didn't you?
Yes.
And on September 22nd, you were arrested along with Alex and Jesse, correct?
Yes.
And your mother hired a private lawyer because she said you had a better chance of beating your case with a private lawyer, correct?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
And your lawyer made a deal with the prosecution, didn't she?
Yes.
And you're here testifying against your own friends, Alex and Jesse, today, correct?
I'm here to tell the truth.
And
I'm
Mr.
not-
Wayne, you aren't going to jail, are you?
Badgering the witness.
Okay, and what's your response to that?
He already answered my question, Your Honor.
I didn't hear it, so if you're not badgering, then I'll let you proceed, but be careful to allow the witness to answer the question, okay?
Okay.
So why don't you ask it again, because I didn't hear the answer.
Okay, and you're here testifying against your own friends, Alex and Jesse, today, correct?
I'm just here to tell the truth.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wayne, you aren't going to jail, are you?
No, my team worked out a deal.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Dennis. Stay there for a sec. Let me just see if there are any redirect questions.
No, we do not at this time.
Okay, you may step down. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
Yes, we would like to call Randy Williams to the stand.
Okay. Ms. Williams, please step forward and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You may be seated. Now, Mr. Thomas, I get it right? You may proceed.
Okay. What is your name?
Randy Williams.
What do you do, Randy Williams?
I'm an NYPD officer and a U.S. Army reservist.
And how long have you been on the NYPD?
About 5 years now.
Okay. Where were you on the day of the hurricane?
I was in New York, but I was called to New Columbia.
So, were you called with the National Guard?
Yes.
When or where were you assigned in New Columbia?
Mega Mart.
On what day were you assigned, Officer Williams?
I was assigned to Mega Mart on the morning of September 21st, 2016.
Okay. What happened on that first assignment?
We had to aid relief. We had to pass out supplies to people, and it was a crowd of about 50 to 100 people. And then a crowd member of the crowd, they threw a bench into the Mega Mart, and they began to enter.
Excuse me 1 second. You have another pen? This court is not as well equipped as most of them.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. Mr. Thomas, please proceed.
And what did you and your partner do when the crowd started flooding in?
We were forced to retreat, but we had to stand by and maintain the peace.
Okay. And did you observe anything while you were standing by?
3 people approaching the Mega Mart.
Do you know who those 3 people were?
Alex, Jesse, and Kelly.
And what did those 3 people do?
2 went inside the store and 1 stood out.
Okay. And Did those other two ever come out?
45 minutes later,
And who were those two?
Jesse and Kelly.
Okay. And did Jesse ever do anything after that? Did you observe him do anything?
He came out with a shopping cart full of clothing and food.
Okay. And then what did he do?
Approached me for directions.
And what did you say?
I asked if he was stocking up for the holidays.
Why did you say that?
I said that because I didn't have any police power to do anything, but I wanted to ensure that they knew that what they were doing was wrong, which was stealing.
Okay. And how did Jesse react to that comment?
He started to become really aggressive, started yelling, and then Alex rushed over and both of them began to clench their fists.
And what happened after that?
My partner had to pull us apart and gave them directions.
What did you and your partner do after that near altercation?
We were called back to the stadium, which we had to unload supplies, which we regularly had to do.
Okay. And on your way back to the stadium, did you observe anything?
The two youths again,
Okay. And what were those two youths doing?
leaving a house.
Were they doing anything else? Did you see them with anything?
They had clothing and other items I cannot identify.
Okay. Did you ever see them again after that?
Back at the stadium the next day
Why?
because I was arresting them and 10 other people.
Okay. Can you please describe the events leading up to this arrest?
September 22nd, we were deputized with police power to arrest people who were looting and continue to loot. And I saw the two again, and I pulled my gun, and I asked if they had stolen anything. They both did not answer, and I both searched their cots.
Okay. And what did you find in their cots?
Jesse had undergarments, and Alex had pills. He had pills, an iPad, and some jewelry.
Okay. Did anything else happen after that, after you arrested them?
I arrested 10 other people.
You arrested 10 other people. And after the storm, did anything else happen?
The Department of Homeland Security, they gave us a performance evaluation that how well we handled the storm.
Your Honor, I would like to submit for identification the Department of Homeland Security performance review of the response to Hurricane Regina as Prosecution's Exhibit A.
Okay.
May I approach the
You
bench?
show it to the defense and then come up here and I'll mark it.
Go.
Okay, I am marking this as Exhibit A.
Officer Williams, can you please read this?
The Department of Homeland Security, in conjunction with the National Guard, responded to the disaster created by Hurricane Regina, working with other agencies such as the Red Cross
Let me pause you
over
just for a sec before you read through it. Can you identify it?
a Department of Homeland Security performance review of response to Hurricane Regina.
Okay. And you're proposing to have her read that? Do you have any objection to that document being admitted as an exhibit?
Oh, no, Your Honor.
No? Okay. Without objection, the document is admitted as Exhibit
Just
A.
continue reading where I was. Working with other agencies such as the Red Cross, over 50,000 patients were treated for injuries and over 100,000 people received food, shelter, and medical supplies for self-treatment. Department of Homeland Security is proud to announce that it acted in accordance with the laws, regulations, policies, procedures, plans, and guidelines to provide all available resources to those in need.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tom. All right. Ms. Jackson, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Williams.
Hi.
On the day in question, you held the position as an Army reservist aiding in relief in New Columbia, correct?
Yes.
At the Mega Mart outside, there were 50 to 100 distressed people waiting to obtain items necessary for their survival, correct?
Yes.
You saw people leave with TVs and computers and other items, correct?
Yes.
On this day, you were not authorized to arrest anyone?
Yes.
Your job was to make sure there were no violent outbursts and to keep the peace, correct?
Yes.
You saw my client, Jesse Robbins, leave the store with a cart full of clothes and food, correct?
Yes.
Jesse approached you asking for directions to the stadium without going through the water?
Yes.
You asked her if they were stocking up for the holidays?
Yes.
Didn't you provoke her?
No.
Okay. However, your job was to keep the peace during this time of need for my clients, and yet you asked them for if they were stocking for the holidays when they just wanted to know how to get back to the stadium.
I wanted them to make sure that they knew that stealing was wrong. That's what I wanted to do.
But
I didn't want to provoke them in any type of way.
But they didn't ask you if they were stealing. They asked how to get back to the stadium, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You said Jesse responded by mouthing off at you.
Yes.
Did you expect any other response during this time?
They could have did whatever they want with the question. So it was up to them to answer it how they wanted to.
No, that's not my question.
Okay, can you restate it, please?
Yes. Did you expect them to react differently to them not getting the answer that they wanted from you?
No.
Okay. Alex then ran over to you as well, correct?
Yes.
If this was you and your friend going through this, you would defend your friend also?
Yes.
In your statement, you say neither one of us were going to back down, correct?
Yes.
If you were supposed to be keeping the peace, do you think this situation should have escalated to this extent?
No.
The altercation got so far that you all had to be pulled apart by someone, correct?
You said several?
Someone pulled
Yes.
apart by someone. Later on, you received a dispatch to go to the stadium to help distribute a truckload of supplies, correct?
Yes.
During one of your trips between the Mega Mart and the stadium, you saw Alex and Jesse departing a house.
Yes.
Once again, Jesse approached you asking for help.
Yes.
Do you think they would have approached you, someone who enforces the law, if they felt that they were doing something wrong?
Yes.
Okay. On September 22nd, you were deputized with local police power, correct?
Yes.
During this time, you were also patrolling the stadium?
Yes.
At this time, there were about 40,000 people housed at the stadium, correct?
Yes.
While patrolling, you came across Jesse and Alex once again?
Yes.
So then you proceeded to pull your gun on them as they were sleeping, correct?
Yes.
So you pulling your gun on teenagers as they were sleeping, did they pose any threat to you?
It was protocol. That's what I was trained to do. And given the manner that they have came to me yesterday, the violent behavior, I wanted to ensure the safety of the people in the stadium and myself.
So how is being asleep violent behavior?
They were looting the other day.
No, how is being asleep violent behavior?
I don't know.
Okay. When searching Alex's car, you found a bag of pills, an iPad, and some jewelry, correct?
Yes.
However, this bag was unidentified?
I didn't know what the pills were.
No, I said it was the bag unidentified, not
Yes.
the pills. Okay. So how would you tie this bag directly to Alex?
I found it under his cot.
But this cot wasn't in a room alone, was it?
No.
There were 40,000 other people, correct?
Yes.
So once again, how is it tied directly to Alex?
I assumed.
Oh, okay. So these items could be anyone's, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Thomas, are you likely to have any redirect?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so take your time. Oh, wait a sec. But Ms. Williams, just remain there for now.
Did he ask me a question?
Okay, you may proceed with redirect.
Why did you pull your gun?
It was protocol.
Okay, and is it unreasonable, in your experience as an NYPD officer for 5 years, do you think that it's unreasonable to assume that items found under someone's cot are in fact theirs?
No.
Okay, no further questions.
You may step down. All right, does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
Yes, the prosecution would like to call Danielle Combs to the stand.
Ms. Combs, please come up here and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Salzman, you may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What is your name,
My name is Danielle Combs.
and where do you live?
I live in New Columbia. I've lived there my entire life.
What do you do for a living?
I'm president of the New Columbia Bank.
As president of the bank, what do you do?
So we sit on a number of boards for a number of local and international companies, including Megamart.
And how long have you worked for the bank?
I've worked there for almost 20 years now, since I was 16.
When did you first find out about Hurricane Regina?
So about 2 days before the hurricane, Megamart contacted me asking for my help in securing their store.
And what did you, along with Megamart, do to secure the store?
So I went down to the store and we moved a display case in front of the main doors in hopes of keeping people out and keeping the safety of the store during the hurricane.
And after you secured the store, what did you do?
So as advised, I drove about 200 miles outside of the storm's path with my family to a nearby hotel.
And when did you return back to New Columbia?
On September 22nd, when it was deemed safe for us to do so.
How did you get back to the city?
We drove.
Did anything happen on your way back?
We stopped along the way for gas tanks were left on, or the pumps were left on, and we filled up our tank.
Was there anyone else at the gas station?
There was military personnel at the gas station, yes.
Okay. What did the city look like when you got back?
The city was a complete disaster. A lot of houses were also damaged.
Was your house damaged?
At first glance, on the outside, it was not as damaged as other houses because my house is built on stilts.
But what did it look like when you got inside?
When I entered my house, it was a complete disaster. There were things all over the floors. It wasn't just from the hurricane either. It looked like someone had gone through my stuff. The house had been turned upside down.
Was anything missing from your house?
So before I could really look and identify anything, Officer Reynolds Williams came and knocked on our door.
And what did Officer Williams want?
He informed me that 2 boys had been arrested and asked me to look for anything that was missing from my home.
And what did he ask you specifically to check for?
After I looked and reported to him, I had found that a pair of Yeezy sneakers were missing, about $50 in cash, costume jewelry, a bag of clothes, and an iPad.
And how long had you been home when you made this report?
That was probably a hectic 20 minutes.
Okay, and do you have insurance to cover your losses?
I do. My insurance only covered $3,000 of the losses, hence my insurance claim.
Okay, and can you please describe just how you were feeling during all of this?
So I get back home from being out of town. I have my 3 young kids, my husband. It was a very hectic time for us. My house was a complete disaster.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Ms. Addison, do you have any cross-examination for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good evening, Mrs. Combs.
Good evening.
Please tell me a little bit about yourself.
I am a native of New Columbia. I have 3 young children. I'm married. I am president of the New Columbia Bank.
Could you please explain to me what you proceeded to do after the hurricane?
I reported to Randy Williams my losses. Can you specify what time?
I mean, what did you do after the hurricane had passed?
I reported back to New Columbia.
Okay. Is it true that you made a stop at a gas station on your drive home? Yes or no?
It is, yes.
Isn't it true that you took advantage of the gas station that accidentally left its pumps on? Yes or no?
Yes, it was a mistake.
Wouldn't you consider the gas to have been necessary?
Not necessary, no.
It wasn't necessary for you to get home safely?
I wanted to get home, but it wasn't necessary for me to get home at that time.
Okay. What is your relationship to Megamart again?
I sit on a board for their company at the bank.
And please remind us what your position is at the bank.
I'm president of the bank.
And what are your responsibilities as president?
We work with their finances and such for a number of local and international companies.
Isn't it true that Megamart recovered from the storm? Yes or no?
Financially, yes.
How much does the store generally make a year?
It's about 100 billion.
Relevance?
Okay, what's the relevance of that?
It's relevant to the case to show that Megamart had no profit decline, or it could have regained all of its wealth in an instant.
And what's your response to that?
Sustained.
It's okay. Okay, I overrule the objection. You may answer it.
Yeah, it's about 100 billion a year.
Okay, thank you. Isn't it true that the products such as dairy, fruits, and vegetables would have spoiled by the time workers had gotten back to the store? Yes or no?
It would have, yes, but that doesn't mean there wasn't damage
Thank you.
to the store.
Alex said that the milk was spoiled when she arrived at the store. You replace products every other day. When workers returned to the store, wouldn't they have thrown away the spoiled products? Yes or no?
Yes.
So, therefore, you would not have made any profit from them, yes or no?
We would not have, no.
So, it didn't matter whether the items were taken or they spoiled.
I wouldn't say it wouldn't matter. They still...
Yes or no?
No.
Thank you. Isn't it true that you make a sizable amount of money to provide for your family?
Some would say so, yes.
Isn't it true that your family can easily regain their wealth based on your income? Yes or no?
Financially, yes. Emotionally,
Thank
no.
you. Isn't it true that some of the items that were stolen were from a donation bag that your wife had collected? Yes or no?
Yes. Husband, but yes.
I'm sorry.
No.
Excuse me, husband. Isn't it true that they were going to be given to those in need?
Yes.
Isn't it true that Alex needed some of those items for a greater cause? Yes or
Yes.
no? Thank you. There is always a possibility that things could get stolen or damaged during a catastrophic event. If the things that were taken were so valuable, why didn't you take them with you?
It was very urgent for me to get out of town. That was protocol, so I didn't have time to go back and gather all of the things that were stolen.
Where was the diabetes medicine located?
In the fridge, I believe. I don't know where my husband left it.
My client never moved throughout your house because it was not her intention to steal. Isn't it true that it would be hard for Miss Reynolds to find the medicine after your home had been damaged from residual winds or other people? Yes or no?
I wouldn't say it was difficult, no.
Okay. But you don't even know where the medicine is.
It's either in the fridge or the medicine cabinet. They could have easily found it.
Okay. But the cabinets were knocked down. So, and there were other damages to your house when my client got there.
I have no way of knowing what damages were there when the client got
Okay,
there. No.
thank you. Do you expect that there is type 1 diabetes medication in everyone's home?
I do not know.
So, if my clients had come to you and told you their dire situation, would you have given the money or clothes, food, and or medicine to them? Yes or no?
I would have, but in this case, they
Thank
took it
you.
from me.
Did you know how long you were going to be away from your home? Yes or no?
I did not.
So why didn't your wife take the medicine with her?
Husband, but
I'm sorry,
again,
husband.
we took enough that they needed. There was still medicine left in my home.
Okay. Couldn't residual winds or debris and other people have caused a lot of the damages? Yes or no?
Most of them, yes.
Isn't it true that jewelry can easily be replaced by your costume jewelry, or maybe even bought at Claire's, or an iPad that can be replaced by the insurance because I believe it costs less than $3,000?
Anything can be replaced. They still came into my home and
you.
took them.
Isn't it true that these items can virtually be replaced by your insurance that can pay up to $3,000?
Yes.
Thank you. Isn't it true that you repeatedly contacted Randy Williams updating your insurance report on the stolen items? Yes or no?
As I found more things that were missing, I did contact him, yes.
Did this then increase your claims from the insurance company?
They increased as I
Yes.
found more things,
Isn't it?
yes.
Thank you. Which one of your family members has diabetes in the house again?
My husband.
And how much do you love your husband?
I love my husband a lot.
Would you say that you would do anything for your husband?
Relevance?
It's relevant to the foundation of what a person would do or operate in a state of an emergency.
Okay, and I'd ask that Ms. Salzman, because you're the attorney for this witness, that you respond.
Mrs. Combs is not the one on trial here.
I just want to point out the similarities and what a person would do in a state of emergency and dire need.
I'm not sure that that's relevant here either, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. If you were in the same position as Miss Alex Reynolds, would you have done the same to save your wife's life?
I would not have done something illegal and taken from somebody else, no.
Okay. Well, what if you had no other resources, like Alex Reynolds?
Again, I don't believe that I would.
Okay. If your life was in danger and you needed medication and your kids did what Miss Alex Reynolds did, would you expect them to go to jail as well?
I would, yes. They did something. They did
Okay.
something wrong.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Addison.
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold on. Okay, Ms. Salzman, you have some redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Your house was not damaged by the hurricane, correct?
In comparison to other houses, no, it wasn't.
And why is this?
Because my house is built on stilts.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you very much. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, and the court's going to take a 5-minute recess at this point, and we'll return in 5 minutes at 7:20. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
No, we do not.
Does the prosecution rest?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Before the defense begins its case, I just want to alert people that cameras are allowed in this courtroom, unlike many courtrooms, and there may, in fact, be some other cameras coming in at some point during this proceeding. With that, the prosecution is rested, and the defense may now begin its case. Do they wish to call any witnesses?
Yes, we would like to call Alex Reynolds to the stand.
Okay. Ms. Reynolds, please come forward and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? You may be seated. And Ms. Addison, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you holding up after these tragic events that have taken place?
I can say I'm doing pretty well due to my circumstances.
How old are you?
Can you repeat the question, please?
How old are you?
I'm 18.
And what are your ambitions for the future?
I would like to be a social worker and help kids in need.
Can you describe to the court how your family situation is?
I live in the New Columbia housing projects with my foster mom who is diabetic and has a back problem, and 5 other brothers and sisters.
And how are they holding up as well?
They're doing awful.
What school do you attend?
I attend New Columbia High School.
And how are your grades this year?
I am a straight A student.
When were you and your family notified of the hurricane?
I saw a notification on Twitter the day before.
And how did you feel?
I was really upset and nervous because who knows what can happen during a hurricane.
What actions did you take to seek shelter?
So me and my family, we went to the stadium because our car was broken and we couldn't make it far with my foster mom back problem.
So the state did not provide any transportation for you?
No.
Describe the atmosphere of the stadium after the storm had passed.
It was very dark and gloomy. It was very scary not being able to recognize your own city. It was just crazy.
What were resources like as time went on in the stadium?
They were very limited and they ran out.
Did you feel like you were provided with sufficient resources from the state?
No.
How was the lack of resources from the state affecting everyone, including your family?
Everyone was hungry, tired, and exhausted.
And how did you provide for your family before the hurricane?
I work at a barbershop as an assistant, and I make about $600 a week, which I give all to my family.
So you are very responsible for the well-being of your family?
Yes.
How was it seeing your family struggle and there wasn't much you could do?
That hurt me because all I do is take care of my younger siblings and provide for my family.
What was your reasoning behind taking the items?
To make sure that I'm okay, my family's okay, and everybody else in the stadium would be okay.
Whose idea was it to go into the store?
Kelly.
And could you please describe Kelly Wayne?
Kelly is someone who is a troublemaker. All he is in drama with everyone and stirs the pot with everything.
Could you please describe Megamart when you arrived?
The windows were broken in and there were a lot of people in there.
How many people were you with?
3, including myself.
Why did you choose not to enter the store?
Because the cops were watching me and I cannot get in trouble because I provide for my family.
And what would happen if you did get arrested at that time?
My family wouldn't have anybody, well, my brothers and sisters and my foster mom wouldn't have anyone to look after them, get supplies for them, and many other things.
What were people doing in the store?
Jessie, she took items that we needed, such as clothes, shoes, baby formula, and other necessity items, while Kelly just took stuff out of greed and for himself.
Were police taking any action to stop anyone?
No.
During the confrontation of Officer Williams towards Jesse, why did you walk up to them?
Because I see the situation heating up and I just wanted to calm Jesse down.
Upon arriving to Danielle Combs' house, how did it look?
The outside looked okay, except the windows were busted in.
Did you contribute to the damage that were inflicted upon the house on the inside or out?
No.
What did you do in the house?
I had intended to go in there to rest, but I had got items that I needed.
How would you describe your actions?
I would describe my actions as a need to survive during a natural disaster.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Addison. Mr. Christensen, do you have any questions? Oh, you're going to do it?
Yes, I am, Your Honor.
Okay. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Alex, you didn't go inside Megamart, correct?
Correct.
And just now on direct examination, you said that you didn't want to go inside Megamart because the cops were watching and you couldn't get into any more trouble.
Correct.
So you didn't want to go inside and steal from a store while the cops were watching, correct?
Correct.
However, when the cops weren't watching, you were completely comfortable going inside the home of Danielle Combs, correct?
That wasn't my intention, but correct.
And to enter the home wasn't a window previously broken by debris.
Correct.
And you contributed to zero breakage of that window.
Correct.
And when you went to Danielle Combs' house, you were looking for items that you could then trade for insulin, correct?
Correct.
And you looked through the entire house, correct?
Correct.
And you did you look for insulin?
No.
You didn't look for any insulin? So you didn't find any insulin, I'm assuming, if you didn't look for any?
Correct.
And then were you aware that there was any insulin in the house at the time?
No, I wouldn't be.
Okay. And from Danielle Combs' house, you took jewelry. You
Correct.
took about $50 in cash?
45.
$50 in cash. You took expensive Yeezy sneakers.
I didn't know they were expensive.
You took Yeezy sneakers.
Correct.
You took an iPad.
Correct.
And you did all this because why?
They were necessity.
And you also needed to trade them, correct?
Correct.
However, did you trade the iPad?
No.
Did you trade the Yeezy sneakers?
No.
How did you use the iPad then?
I used the iPad to check the NHC, which is the National Hurricane Center, and I checked the atmosphere of New Columbia and how our city was doing, which was terrible.
And you didn't look up that information on the iPad while you were at the house, correct?
No.
Why didn't you not look it up at the house? Why did you leave the house with the iPad and then look it up? You could have just looked it up inside our house.
Because I needed to get back to trade for insulin.
You wanted to get out of there?
I needed to get back to drink for insulin.
Okay. And moving on, did you trade all of the cash and jewelry?
Yes, as much as I could.
Did you trade all or as much as you could?
All.
All. Your Honor, I would like to introduce the testimony of Alex Reynolds as Exhibit B.
Okay. Show that to counsel. Okay, let me mark that. So marked.
And can you read this highlighted part later?
Before she reads it, when you identify it, is that
Oh,
your prior testimony?
That's my testimony.
Okay. Is there any objection to the admission of this exhibit?
No.
Okay, with no objection, Exhibit B is admitted.
We exchanged all the cash and jewelry for insulin and food.
Then, Miss Reynolds, if you exchanged all of the cash and jewelry for insulin and food, can you explain why there was some jewelry found under your cot when Officer Williams was arresting you?
That was not my cot.
That was not your cot?
Not my cot.
You were sleeping on it?
But that's not my cot.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay. Ms. Addison, are you likely to have any redirect?
Yes, we have a redirect.
Okay, so we'll wait a second.
What are you going to ask?
Okay, why don't you proceed with your redirect, Ms. Addison?
Miss Reynolds, what was the reasoning for going into the house initially?
Initially, my reason was to rest because we were waiting in 4 feet of water, which was about at my waist. And when I went in to rest.
And what did you do with the items that you salvaged from the house?
As I said previously, with the iPad, I searched the NHC to check the area and how my city was doing and all the stuff that would come, like the promises that would come, and the area and how bad everything was, the hurricane and our houses. And I got these because my shoes were trash. I could barely walk in them. And the jewelry and the cash I traded for insulin for my mom, who is diabetic.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, you may step down, Ms. Reynolds. Okay, does the defense have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Jordan Ash to the stand, please.
Okay, Ms. Ash, please step forward. You swear to tell the truth? You raise your hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may be seated.
Good evening, Ms. Ash. Good evening. Can you tell the court a little bit about yourself, please? Well, I'm 63 years old, and I live here in New Columbia, where I take care of me and my 6 children. And can you describe how important it is to take care of your children? My children are my life. Without them, I wouldn't be who I am today. And what is your relationship to Alex? Alex is my oldest child, and she does all that she can to help the family. And how would you describe her? Alex is a very beautiful and brave and brilliant young woman. Okay. How do you provide for yourself and your children? Well, because I get little money from the government, I rely on Alex a lot. And did you receive a notification about the hurricane? Yeah, 2 days prior. And did you evacuate the city? Well, because of my back and my health, we just went to the stadium where we were told it would be safe. And can you please describe the state of the city after the hurricane? The state of New Columbia after the hurricane. The city was horrendous. I lived here all my life and I never seen the city in this state. And did you receive the necessary items being distributed by the Red Cross? The Red Cross did the bare minimum to help. They handed out crackers and water, which was not enough, no. And with Alex being such a huge help to your family, did she try to help you all in any way? Alex did all that she could. And what did she do? She went out and she got food and clothes and, of course, my insulin. And you mentioned insulin. What would happen to you if you didn't have this insulin? Without my insulin, I wouldn't be here today defending my child. And Miss Ash, were these items essential to the survival of you and your family? Of course. And can you describe the state you and your family would be in if Alex didn't take the initiative to help? Without Alex, I don't know if I would be here. I don't know where my children would be. And what would happen to your family if Alex was arrested? Oh, who knows? I think my children, they would be put back under the system and we would just be so broken apart. And what would it do to your family if Alex was found guilty and had to pay about $11,000 in fines?
Objection. Relevance.
Okay, what's the relevance of that?
Alex is the sole provider for her family, and if she's arrested, then she won't be able to help her family.
That doesn't change the fact that Alex committed a crime.
Okay, and what's your response to that?
Withdrawn. Withdrawn. Withdrawn.
Okay, questions withdrawn.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dennis. All right, Mr. Thomas, do you have any cross-examination for this
Yes,
witness?
I do.
You may proceed.
So, Jordan, you spoke to the Metro Times, and you were quoted in an article following the storm, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would like to introduce the Metro Times article, Hurricane Regina Tears Through New Columbia with Historic Damage and Historic Casualties, into that. I would like to mark it for identification as Prosecution's Exhibit C.
Show it to the defense and then bring it up here to be marked.
Okay.
I may mark it. Okay. Marked as Exhibit C is the Metro Times article.
Do you recognize this? Do you recognize this?
Oh, but these letters are so small. Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. Can you please read here for me?
Before she reads it, is there any objection to this exhibit being admitted?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted without objection, the Metro Times article.
We were struggling to get enough food and water. There were so many people in the stadium and not enough supplies.
This was written after the storm, correct?
Yes.
And you were aware that your your daughter had been arrested and was being charged, right? Correct?
Yes,
Yes. You love your daughter, correct?
of course.
Okay. And you said she is your sole provider, correct?
Yes.
You do anything for your daughter?
Anything.
Anything, even lie to a reporter?
Lie to a reporter. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
You would do anything for your daughter, correct?
Yes.
Even lie to a reporter?
Well,
Exaggerate events?
I didn't exaggerate.
You didn't exaggerate events. Your sole provider, wait, let me move on. You said Alex is your only child, correct?
No, Alex is not my only child.
Okay, I mean, you did say that, but So, when did Alex come back from her trip or with the iPad?
When did she come back?
When did she come back with the iPad?
A few hours later, when she left the stadium.
Was that the first trip?
Oh, second trip.
That was the second trip?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to introduce the testimony of Jordan Ash for identification as Exhibit D.
Okay, show it to the defense, and then
Hold on.
Okay. The testimony of Jordan Ash is marked for identification as Exhibit D.
Oh, yes.
Can you please read this underlined section?
Before she does that, is there any objection to the admission of the testimony of Jordan Ash?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted without objection. You may proceed.
The first time they came back with a basket full of clothing, food, and an iPad.
So, in your testimony, you said it was on the first trip.
Well, I'm 63 years old.
So
young
we
man,
can't trust your
and-
memory? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's.
You're saying
fake,
your memory
but-
is faulty.
Objection, Your Honor, badgering.
Okay, and your responses?
I'll move on.
Okay,
But
been sustained. He's moving on.
can we trust your memory?
Yes, you can trust my memory.
Then why did you say two different things in your witness testimony and here today?
Well, I just, I don't remember everything that happened, but
So we cannot trust your memory.
a few days apart. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Will there be any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so we'll wait a sec. Okay, Ms. Dennis, you said you had some redirect?
Miss Ash, what is Alex's role in your household?
Alex, she's a very important care provider.
And what did she do with the items that she returned back with?
Well, of course, my insulin I used and the shoes she wore, and she needed the money and the jewelry to trade for my insulin and the iPad. She just used to gather information that the Red Cross wasn't telling us.
Okay, thank you, Miss Ash. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, you may step down. Thank you very much.
He should have stayed.
All right, does the defense have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to call Ms. Jess Robbins to the stand.
Okay. Come around this way. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may be seated. And Mr. McGreer, you may proceed.
Hello, Mr. Robbins.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. Please tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Jessie Robbins. I'm 19 years old and I attend New Columbia High School.
Who do you live with?
I used to live with my great-grandfather.
How old was your great-grandfather?
He was 62 years old
How long have you been living with your great-grandfather?
since I was 3 years old.
Why were you living with your great-grandfather?
Objection. Relevance.
Okay. Ms. McGreer, what would be the relevance of that question? Take your time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but this question will show my client's insight and mindset during the Hurricane Regina and why she salvaged from the Mega Mart.
Okay, and your response?
The amount of time in which she has lived with her great-grandfather does not show any of that, any of the actions that were caused her stealing from the Mega Mart.
Okay, I think that might be true, but I'm going to give some leeway here just to get some background in the situation, subject to another objection if it doesn't lead anywhere.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So I'm overruling the objection. You may answer.
My mother abandoned me when I was 3 years old, so I've been living with my great-grandfather ever since.
Please explain if you have been in any real trouble.
I have been arrested twice for petty theft, but that was 2 years ago. I have learned from my mistakes.
Please explain if you have been diagnosed with any mental illnesses.
I have anger management issues, but I have not had an outburst since the 10th grade, which was 2 years ago, and I have worked on calming myself and improving my...
Please explain what you and your great-grandfather did when Hurricane Regina hit the city of New Columbia.
I had an old golf club, and I bashed a hole in the roof, so we climbed on top of the roof, and we awaited for someone to rescue us.
How long did it take before you and your great-grandfather were rescued?
It took a full day. We were up there the entire day, and it took a very long time.
Please describe the scenery after Hurricane Regina struck.
Everything was covered in water. It was a disaster. People were, they were looking for food and shelter, and everyone's clothes, and the whole city was just a wreck.
How were you and your great-grandfather affected by the hurricane?
My great-grandfather died on account of being on top of the roof for the entire day. No one took the initiative to come and get us. It took a full day, and his breathing problems were messing up, so he had passed away due to the fact that the government wasn't doing anything to help.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
How did his death make you feel?
I was sad and upset. The government failed us. If they had did more to help us, my grandfather would still be here. He died on account of no one tried to help. They had the Red Cross and it wasn't enough. He died. That was the only person I was living with. I don't have any other family or anyone to take care of me.
I'm sorry. Could you please explain to me what you specifically did after the hurricane?
We went to the stadium where everyone else was to search for food and shelter.
Could you please explain to me who told you about the situation at Mega Mart?
Kelly.
What did you do when you reached the Mega Mart?
We were searching for necessities that we needed, and I had salvaged food and clothing, things that I needed to survive. Without these things, I would probably be
Objection.
dead.
Opinion on the ultimate issue.
What's your response to that?
I'm sorry, but she wasn't giving her opinion.
repeat that?
I'm sorry. She wasn't giving her opinion. She was just giving her answers to the question. What did you do when you reached the Mega Mart? And she said that she was salvaging clothes and food.
And your response?
She was clearly stating that she needed these that she needed these items, which did not answer the question, and also directly go towards the necessity defense, which shows an opinion on the ultimate issue.
That's an interesting objection. Give me a moment to think about it. I think most of us would agree that food and clothing are probably necessities, so the fact that she has an opinion that food and clothing are necessities is not something that's unusual, so I think I'm going to overrule the objection and allow her to continue to answer that question.
Please go on.
Without the food and clothing that I salvaged, I would most likely not even be here.
What did Ms. Kelly Wayne salvage from the Mega Mart?
Unimportant things that she didn't even need. Other people were starving and hungry and clothes falling off their back, and she took CDs and video games, stuff that's not important to anyone. I took food and clothes, stuff that I needed to survive.
What did you do after you salvaged these materials from the Mega Mart?
We went back to the stadium, and then Alex needed insulin for her foster mother, and we headed out again.
Where did you go?
Dan Combs' house.
What did you salvage?
I didn't take anything from Dan Combs' house.
Were you involved in an altercation with Officer Randy Williams?
Officer Randy made a joke, and he said that we were doing Christmas shopping. This wasn't a joke. I just lost my grandfather, and he had a nerve to ask me a question, and it made me upset. We're trying to survive, and he's asking me something that's just, it's ignorant. And Christmas shopping, we're trying to survive. We're not trying to do any Christmas shopping. And he made a threat to me. He said that I shouldn't be saying anything to military personnel or he would lock me up. And then he threatened me. He got in my face, and he just made a joke, and that something like that is not funny. That makes it seem like me losing my grandfather is funny. It's not funny. It's not a joke.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We'll just wait a moment for the scores. Okay, Ms. Salzman, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so first I'm going to ask you a few questions about how you're feeling on the day of the hurricane, okay? So on the day of the hurricane, you were angry at the government, correct?
Upset.
Well, you were upset at them because you thought that the government had failed you.
That's correct.
They had failed you in every way.
I lost my grandfather. That is every way to me.
Yes or no, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You were also angry at the Mega Mart.
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, this was a Mega Mart that had arrested you before, correct?
Correct.
And they had actually arrested you twice before, correct?
Correct.
And they had arrested you twice before for stealing, correct?
Correct.
And you said in your interview with the police officer that you stole because you thought that they didn't care about your neighborhood. Is that correct?
They didn't care about our neighborhood. I didn't say that's why.
Yes
I
or no,
stole it.
please?
I didn't say that's why I stole it.
So you didn't steal. Okay, moving on. In your interview, you also said that the Mega Mart takes and takes and takes and never gives anything back. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and now I'm going to ask you a few questions about the day you were arrested. The day you were arrested along with your friend Alex, correct?
Yes.
And you guys were brought back to the jail cell together, correct?
Yes.
Were you immediately split up?
No.
You were not immediately split up.
No.
Well, in your testimony, you said that you were. Has anything changed since then?
I don't know. A lot of stuff happened that day.
Okay, so were you or were you not immediately split up from Alex when you
We're immediately split up.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions about the day of the hurricane, okay? On the day of the hurricane, you spoke with Alex and Kelly at the stadium, correct?
Yes.
You spoke with them and you learned that people were stealing from shops, correct?
Yes.
And you learned that police were not doing anything to stop those people who were stealing, correct?
Yes.
And you decided, along with Alex and Kelly, to go to the Mega Mart, correct? And you decided to go to the Mega Mart to steal things, correct?
For my survival.
Okay, so yes or no, you decided to go to the Mega Mart to take things, yes?
Yes, for my survival.
Okay, did you bring any money with you?
No, I didn't have any money.
Okay, so you did not plan on paying for the things that you were going to take?
How could I have any money when the clothes I had on were falling off my back?
Were you or were you not planning on paying for the things that you would take from the Mega Mart, yes or no?
I didn't have any money to pay for them. I needed those things.
Yes or no, please?
No.
Okay, thank you. While you were at the Mega Mart, about how many people were around it?
A lot.
Could you give me a number, an estimate?
About 100 or 50.
Okay, and were all those people entering the Mega Mart?
Most of them.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to ask you a little bit about the second time you went out, your second trip. So you left the stadium for a second time, is that correct?
Yes.
And you left because Alex said that she needed insulin for her foster parent, correct?
Yes.
So you went out to get insulin, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and while you were out, you saw a house that was in fairly good condition, correct?
That was in.
Fairly good condition,
It wasn't
sorry.
in good condition.
Well, it was built on stilts, is that right?
Yes, but it was still damages on the house. It wasn't in as good a good condition as you're saying it.
But it was in better condition than the other houses, correct?
In most houses, yes.
Okay, thank you. And there was a small hole in one of the windows, is that correct?
Yes.
And that is how you entered, correct?
Yes.
Did you have to break the windows
We
to
had
enter?
to get in. It was already a hole.
Okay, so did you break the window?
No, I didn't.
Did Alex break the window?
Alex had to get in.
Okay, so did Alex, yes or no, break the window to enter the house?
Yes.
And how did she do this?
With her shoe.
So she broke the window with her shoe, correct?
Yes.
To get into the house. And after she broke the window, she entered the house, yes?
Yes.
And then you followed her. Okay. And when you guys went in, you said that it was really wet outside. Were you guys drenched in water?
Yes, we were both drenched in water.
Okay, so when you entered the house, there was water all over you, correct?
Yes.
And so you were getting water all over the carpeting and all over everything in the house, correct?
We were getting water all over everywhere. Everything was wet.
Okay. And when you went into the house, you and Alex were both looking for either insulin or things to trade for insulin, correct?
Yes.
And would you say that you searched all of the house?
Most, all, yeah.
So you went around looking through things in the house to get trade for insulin, correct?
Yes.
Did you look in the cabinets?
Well, we looked in most places, yes.
Okay, and so can you answer my question? Did you look in the cabinets, yes or no? And you looked in them by opening them, correct? You
The
opened.
cabinet door was already off.
Okay, but you rummaged around in them, yes?
We looked at it. The door was off.
Okay, and then did you look anywhere else in the house?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, stay there for a sec. Is there likely to be any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, hold on a sec. Ms. McGeary, you may ask your redirect.
Thank you. Once again, could you please explain to me what you specifically did after the hurricane?
We went to the stadium and searched for food and clothing. And at the stadium, there were over 40,000 people. And yeah, the Red Cross had food, but it wasn't enough. There's 40,000 people, and it wasn't enough. it wasn't enough food or enough clothing, and I needed to survive. People needed to survive.
What did you salvage from Mega Mart?
Food and clothing, necessities for my health.
Could you please explain to me if said items were necessities?
I had clothing and baby food and shoes, things that were falling off my body. I hadn't eaten or slept or drank anything. Shoes falling apart, clothes falling off. I needed to survive. It was a tragic moment and event for everyone, and without those items, I could be dead.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. You may step down.
Good job.
Does the defense have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And we'll move on to closing arguments. Mr. Thomas, are you prepared? You may proceed.
Okay. Your Honor, as we stated in our opening statement, as the prosecution, we must prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, Jesse and Alex looted, engaged in a riot, and engaged in disorderly conduct. We have proved all of these things through this trial. Meanwhile, the defense have not proved that by a preponderance of the evidence, Jesse and Alex acted out of necessity. I will now briefly go over the 3 statutes that they are being charged with and explain why, through this trial, they have been proven guilty. The first is looting. It is clear that the defendants are guilty of looting. Looting is an intentional entry by a person without authorization into any dwelling belonging to another or place of business in which normal security is not present by virtue of hurricane, flood, fire, act of God, or by virtue of a riot, mob, or other human agency, and taking or damaging of the owner's property. Jesse entered into a business, Megamart, without authorization. Jesse entered into a Megamart where a crowd of rioters had toppled a freezer to gain entrance and had thrown a bench through a door. Alex entered into the private residence of Danielle Combs without authorization, and Alex broke the window of Mrs. Combs, and the recent hurricane had forced Combs' family to leave the home. Therefore, the normal security would not be present. Jesse has admitted to and has clearly stolen from the Megamart. Alex has admitted to and has clearly stolen from the Megamart. Also, Alex clearly knew that what she was doing was wrong because she stayed outside of the Megamart in order to not get in trouble. But the defendants satisfy all of the looting statute and therefore are guilty of looting. But the defense would try to use the necessity defense. In the necessity defense, the first prong of the necessity defense is that the conduct committed must be immediately necessary to avoid imminent harms. This does not apply to Alex and Jesse's conduct because Jesse took food and clothing from Megamart, even though there were, according to Officer Williams, truckloads of supplies being shipped in every day. There were long lines, but the defendants only waited 1 hour. And as you saw in this trial, over 100,000 people were being helped throughout New Columbia by the Red Cross. Food, water, and medicine never ran out at the stadium. They never said it ran out, just that it had become tough. Jesse stole simply because she has a personal vendetta against Megamart. She's been arrested by this Megamart 3 times now. Alex took high-end sneakers from Combs' house and was found wearing them when arrested, even though she could have taken a less expensive pair of shoes if she simply needed new shoes, or simply obtained some from one of the many relief workers at the stadium, but instead she took Yeezys. Alex took an iPad from Danielle Combs' house, even though she could have just looked up the information while at Danielle Combs' house and left the iPad there instead of stealing it. Alex took the cash and jewelry and says she traded all of it for insulin. Yet Alex's witness statement says she traded even though Alex's witness statement says she traded all of the jewelry for insulin, as we saw in this very trial, that fact is not true. Officer Williams found the jewelry taken from Combs's home under Alex's cot, and she would claim that this isn't her cot, even though she was sleeping on it. There was diabetes medication in Combs's house. So why did she not take it if she thoroughly searched the house? And again, over 100,000 people were given supplies at the stadium, including medical supplies, which no one during this trial has ever said ran out. So why did she think it was a better idea to break the law instead of wait in line, if not for her own greed? Your Honor, even if we were to assume that taking these items was necessary, which it wasn't, to avoid some imminent harms, these harms were very insignificant. That is relevant because the second requirement of the necessity defense is that the defendants prove that the desirability and urgency of avoiding harms clearly outweighs the harms sought to be prevented by the looting law. The harms sent to be prevented by the looting law, however, are enormous. Danielle Combs's home was invaded, her personal privacy was violated, and her items were stolen. Her house was turned upside down, and after arriving home, her personal belongings were rummaged through and strewn about, and she had to settle her children into a house whose sanctity had been violated. The looting law seeks to prevent these very significant harms, and these aren't the only harms that the law seeks to prevent. The looting law also seeks to prevent the greater societal harms. If people can break the law, enter homes and businesses, and steal whatever they please whenever there is a crisis, our societal stability would break down. Our way of life is centered around our privacy and property rights as American citizens. Without the looting law, these rights would be severely damaged. To understand the severity of the harms that the looting law seeks to prevent, one need no look further than the punishment the looting law allows: 15 years without parole. This law is clearly trying to stop some very significant harms. Now, on to the other two charges, engaging in a riot and disorderly conduct. First off, engaging in a riot. For the defendants to be guilty of engaging in a riot, they must have participated in a riot. A riot is a crowd of 5 or more people engaging in violent conduct that is disruptive to normal police or law enforcement action. Alex and Jesse are guilty of engaging in a riot because, as Jesse testified during her own cross-examination, they entered the Megamart at the same time as a crowd of people, of 5 or more people, specifically 50 to 100 people, who had just flooded into the Megamart in such a violent and disruptive manner, throwing benches at doors and toppling freezers through windows, that they forced a trained police officer and his partner to retreat and stand by because they assessed that any interference would agitate the situation and because they were outnumbered without the power to arrest. Next, disorderly conduct. First, what we had to prove was that the defendants either intended to cause or recklessly create a risk of inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm to persons. Now, I would say that running up into an officer's face, getting 3 inches away from his face, clenching your fists and mouthing off to her it will cause annoyance and harm, but it is also very threatening. It is violent or tumultuous behavior. They were seen committing violent or tumultuous behavior towards Officer Williams. All of the defense's witnesses are also self-serving and not credible. Alex said that she did not contribute to any of the damage to the house, yet admitted during her own cross-examination that she did in fact break the window. Alex claims that the cot she slept on wasn't hers, yet she slept on the cot. Jordan's memory clearly cannot be trusted, yet because she said 2 different things during her own cross-examination. The defense's theatrics do not mask the facts of this case. Your Honor, for these reasons, we urge you to find Alex and Jesse guilty of all 3 charges and punished appropriately for the crimes they have committed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. Ms. McGeer, do you have a closing argument?
McGreer, yes, Your
McGreer.
Honor.
Sorry.
May I begin?
Go. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and thank you for your attention on this very important case. Once again, my name is Sharika McGreer, and I will be administering the closing statement for the defense. The prosecution were not affected by the results of Hurricane Regina. They weren't traumatized by the loss of property or loved ones. They did not lose their livelihood. So why should they be able to decide whether or not what my clients did was wrong? The prosecution did not have to worry about their homes being destroyed, nor their loved ones being ripped from their lives. They didn't face a threat that day Hurricane Regina struck down in all her fury on the city of New Columbia. Two very important people did in this case. Two very important people experienced a tragedy. And those people are my clients. They did what they thought they had to do to survive. None of us had to make the split-second decision that they did to die or to live. And yet, we are all asked to second-guess them today. My clients did the impossible. They survived a natural disaster, a hurricane, a terrible phenomenon that either left thousands seriously injured or dead. This ultimate storm left 1,765 people dead and was one of the deadliest storms of the year. Yes, my clients salvaged from the New Columbia Megamart and Miss Daniel Combs' home, but they did out of the goodness of their hearts. After they salvaged what they could from the wreckage, they freely gave to the citizens of New Columbia and saved many from illness and death. For their heroic actions in a time of hectic disassembly, they should be praised and worshipped, but instead are criticized and ridiculed for their quick thinking and bravery. Instead, they are forced before you as prisoners of their own beneficial demonstrations. This will be a shameful thing for us as a society because we are valuing materials over human life, and that is shameful. That is shameful. Even though the prosecution has constructed some believable reasons for why our clients might be guilty, the prosecution has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that our clients actively engaged in the act of looting for their own personal gain, engaging in a riot, and disorderly conduct because, as the prosecution said, by definition, looting is the breaking and entering as well as stealing from a residence. Our clients salvaged, retrieved, and preserved materials from potential loss or adverse circumstances. I repeat, salvaged, retrieved, and preserve materials from potential loss or adverse circumstances due to necessity because the local officials failed to aid them in their time of need and thus should not be charged for the act of looting. A riot is a public disturbance involving an assemblage of 5 or more persons who, by tumultuous and violent conduct, creates grave danger or damage or injury to property or persons or substantially obstructs law enforcement or other government function. Our clients did not engage in a riot because our clients only consisted of 2 persons and were not engaged in any violent conduct. A person is guilty of disorderly conduct if with intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, she/he engages in fighting or threatening or in violent or tumultuous behavior, makes unreasonable noise, uses obscene language, or makes an obscene gesture, or creates a hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act which serves no legitimate person of the actor. Our clients did not engage in disorderly conduct due to the fact that they did not cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm. They did not engage in fighting or threatening or violent behavior. Now, the prosecution may argue that my client, Ms. Jess Robbins, engaged in disorderly conduct because she was an active participant in the altercation with Mr. Randy Williams. However, she was merely acted in self-defense due to the fact that Randy Williams threatened her first with the prospect of jail. She was traumatized and in an unstable state when an adult officer drew her gun and provoked her. Honestly, not getting upset shows her strength during this stressful situation. My clients did absolutely nothing wrong except for fight for their lives. If these 2 individuals were to be charged and convicted of these crimes, they will face up to over $11,000 in fines and over 15 years in jail time. I remind you, freedom is key, and honestly, I believe that the aspect of human life is priceless and worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McGreer. We're going to take a 15-minute recess, and I will be back to render a decision, and the scorers will render a winner. So, see you back at 8:30.
You're good. Girl, you need to just slow down. You ran too fast.
All rise. In the case of the People versus Reynolds and Robbins, this court is now in session. Honorable Judge Norm Schneider presiding.
Thank you. You may be seated. This was a very, very hard-fought trial. The presentations by the prosecution and the defense here tonight were both passionate and excellent. The two teams battled over what happened following the Hurricane Regina and whether Alex Reynolds and Jesse Robbins should be convicted of 3 separate, though interrelated, offenses. These were complicated facts and a complicated presentation, and I thank both sides for making my decision very difficult. I will start with the 2 lesser offenses. On the second count, engaging in a riot, the counsel has presented the law very succinctly. It's clear that mere presence at a riot is not an offense. There's no question that there was damage at the Mega Mart and that these 2 defendants were there, but there's no evidence that they were part of the group that broke the windows or moved a refrigerator. In fact, the testimony from the police officer seemed to indicate that those items had already happened before the 3 people arrived. So for that, I find both defendants not guilty of engaging in a riot. On the third count, disorderly conduct, again, the law was very nicely gone over. The only act that might be relevant to this charge that I could see is Jesse Robbins' interaction with Officer Williams. It's clear there were some choice words and that the parties had to be separated. It's also clear that Alex Reynolds took no part beyond possibly attempting to calm the situation. Clearly, Alex Reynolds is not guilty of any disorderly conduct, and I so find. The question of whether Jesse Robbins is guilty comes down to whether she had the intent to cause a public inconvenience, an intent that I do not find, so she too is not guilty of disorderly conduct. On to the hardest count now, the looting. Again, the law was nicely described by the attorneys. It's clear that Jesse Robbins intentionally entered the Mega Mart and removed unidentified property that was later distributed to those who needed it at the stadium. Alex Robbins did not enter nor take any property there. It's also clear that Alex Reynolds entered the Coombs residence and removed property, some of which she traded for insulin necessary for her foster mother's health. If that were the end of the matter, then both defendants would be found guilty by this court. But the defense brought forth the idea that the defendants took these items only because of an overarching necessity under the circumstances. That is a proper defense in New Columbia, though it's not clear what the parameters of it are, and the case law surrounding it coming from different states is likewise difficult to evaluate. If I had to find that the defense had to prove necessity beyond a reasonable doubt, as the prosecution had to do for the offenses, I might not have to weigh this defense so carefully, but I do. It's clear that things were dire and dangerous in New Columbia following the hurricane. For those who were unable to escape, there was a danger of imminent harm. Jesse Robbins' great-grandfather died following the hurricane and the flooding. She could not obtain treatment and food and water. Similarly, Alex Reynolds' foster mother clearly needed her insulin. Well, what does the code mean by immediately necessary to avoid imminent harm? For this, again, there's no clear answer in the code, and the cases are not clear either. But in this case, Jesse Robbins' great-grandfather had already died before she went out to take the items. She took clothing and food and other items. Was it reasonable to take food and clothing? She distributed a lot of the food and clothing to others, but kept some items for herself. Was what she stole necessary to avoid imminent harm? I'll come back to that in a second. Alex had a desperate foster mother who needed medication. She broke a window and looked for materials to get that medication. In doing so, she missed what was apparently there, the exact drug that the foster mother needed. Instead, she took cash, jewelry, and an iPad and new sneakers. She traded some of this stolen property, maybe all of it, it was not clear, for the medicine for the foster mother, but some of was still under the cot when she was arrested. The explanation that that wasn't her cot is very difficult to believe. Well, was what she stole necessary to avoid imminent harm? The court decisions relevant to the necessity defense are not uniform. There's no clear standard I can utilize. What is clear is that necessity as a defense, if there's imminent harm, and it doesn't have to be your imminent harm, it can be imminent harm to others. This court finds that obtaining food and medicine for yourself and others is, under the circumstances presented by Hurricane Regina, justified, and that looting these items at this time is not something I will convict the two of you for, even if some other items were taken in order to barter for the medicine. But are shoes and clothing necessary to avoid imminent harm? It's clearly nice to have warm and dry clothing, but is that the kind of discomfort that is enough? How many clothes are necessary? Furthermore, is an iPad necessary to avoid imminent harm? Was the jewelry that wasn't immediately traded necessary to avoid imminent harm? We don't know from the testimony how much insulin was traded for and whether that would be sufficient to protect a life for a long enough period. But I find on the testimony here that Jesse Robbins took more items than were necessary to prevent imminent harm, and that Alex Reynolds took more items that were necessary to prevent imminent harm. Therefore, I find both Jesse Robbins and Alex Reynolds guilty of the felony of looting. The usual sentence for looting during a state of emergency is much harsher than it should be. Therefore, under the facts and the law of this case, I am going to use judicial discretion to modify the sentence. I therefore sentence Jesse Robbins to 3 years in prison with all of this time suspended so that she will serve no jail time. She took more clothing items than were necessary to prevent imminent harm, so I will fine her $100 to be payable within 30 days. I sentence Alex Reynolds to 3 years in prison with all of that time suspended so that she will serve no jail time. An iPad and jewelry were taken unjustifiably, therefore I will fine her $500 to be payable within 60 days. I thank all counsel and witnesses, and now we'll present the other part of the verdict, which is this was the closest mock trial ever in the history of the DC Street Law Program. With 300 possible points, there was 1 point that separated the two sides. Before I get to who the winner is, I will say that we decided that Ryan Yora was the best prosecution witness, and that Kate Salzman was the best prosecution attorney. I find that Amari Graves was the best prosecution witness, defense witness, and that Rajay Jackson was the best defense attorney. The winner is the defense, Banneker. Congratulations. Okay. Congratulations to both sides, and if you would like feedback on your individual presentations, you're welcome to go to the scorers, and they will be happy to discuss this with you. Thank you, everybody, and this concludes the 45th DC mock trial.
If we could please give both teams a round of applause. They really did wonderfully.
Oh yeah, thank you, Judge. See, you in our favor this time.
We know the students are all celebrating their success. Both teams should be very, very pleased with their performance tonight. As was said by the judge, this was the closest mock trial result in the history of this program. What we would like to do now is to provide just a little bit of feedback for both of the teams.
We're going to give it to them. If they want to come talk to us, then we're happy to give it.
Change of plans. If you would like to get some feedback on your performance, our scorers will stay here briefly in order to provide you some brief comments. And I also wanted to take a second to thank Professor Richard Rowe. If you could join me in a round of applause for Professor Rowe. The reason why we have come together for these past 45 years is due in most part to Professor Rowe's dedication to his law students, his dedication to Georgetown Law, and his real dedication to learner-centered, high-quality, interactive, engaging instruction. I can say without any hesitation that Rick Rowe has changed my life, and I'm sure he's changed the lives of many people who are seated here today and many more who just could not be here. So again, please join me in thanking Professor Rowe for all of his dedication and his work.
Thank you. Well, as I said, congratulations to both teams. It was an extraordinary experience watching you. You showed so much poise, intelligence, and ability. I'm so very, very proud of you. And congratulations to both. You were so close. You know, there's no real winner or loser, I believe, very strongly. So I want to make one last announcement. I neglected to mention that we actually had an attorney along with Fried Frank, who is from a different firm. This is Greg Lipper from Clinton, Brook, and Peed. Greg, stand up for a second. So he's... Well, congratulations to everyone. Stay to talk to the scorers and really celebrate tonight and have a wonderful time. Thank you so much. Oh, can the two teams come up for pictures? Have prosecution and defense teams come up for pictures.
Yes, come on now, Judge. Absolutely. We'll be taking photographs, so if the two teams could come to the front.
Right like here, because you gotta squeeze in together.
Can we, like, yeah.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
Some get behind. Great job, guys. I'm not that tall. Can you be seen? Does this work or no? We can do better. I don't like the angle. Come on, Taylor. Wait, just go stand in front of them. I don't think there's that. I'll be honest with you guys. Congratulations, guys. Thanks, Judge. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Another photo. Another one. I think I can stand on my tip. Yeah, I'm cheating. I know.
Smile, Troy. Smile.
Look how tall I am. I'm married for height. I'm married for height, so all my kids are over 6 feet.
Well,
I need to do that.
May I give the prize for this wonderful team from Russia? To make your life sweet. Thank you. You're great actors. Yes.
Oh, not long.
We gotta take a picture with Adam and Eve.
Whatever you want.
Have your phone. judge?
Let's do it. I'll just stand right here.
Oh, that's nice. There you go. Nice.
With the champ. Oh, right here. Look at Garrett. Good smile, everyone.
I was so impressed by you. I really was.
Nice.
So I hope that you
It doesn't work? Okay. Good job.
because you are a natural.
Somebody send me
I'm not
this.
even kidding. You are good.
Thanks, guys. Great work today. You did really wonderful. Really wonderful.